And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your early Saturday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. This will be another entry in the continuing series of the best movie you've never seen. And this is a film which should not, underline, should not have slipped under the radar given the presence of a big movie star at the center, a big movie star who was everywhere at this particular point in history, and a supporting actor who I've talked about as basically a cheat code type of an actor, never gave a bad performance. And in this film, he's so good that he steals every scene that he is in with the star of the film. The other reason why it's strange that this movie didn't make a bigger impression, it got an Oscars build-up. It ended up getting nominated for 2 Academy Awards, which isn't bad. It was nominated for the supporting actor that I referenced without naming, and it was also nominated for Best Cinematography. 2 years later, a movie with a very similar, also true story came out, got a ton of acclaim, and even won an Oscar for its lead actress, in that case, Julia Roberts. Now, I am not anti-Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts, a great movie star. But I believe that the lead actor in this film gives one of the 2 or 3 best performances of his quite considerable career. The movie I'm referencing is 1998's A Civil Action, starring John Travolta and Robert Duvall, crushing it in a supporting role. So, this film is now more than 26 years old. It was released wide in the United States in January of 1999. It qualified for the Oscars. I think it opened in a couple of theaters late in December. And I remember being excited for the film. 1998 is a good year for movies. You had Terrence Malick's big comeback and a ton of Oscar nominations. I don't think it won any for Thin Red Line. And you had, of course, Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, which won most of the major awards with the exception of Best Picture, which was captured by Shakespeare in Love, a film that history doesn't remember as well as I feel like it should. I don't know how a film that won Best Picture somehow became underrated, but I think that film is fantastic. And as big a Spielberg fan as I am, I was not upset when it ended up winning Best Picture. I'm a Saving Private Ryan fan, but I don't know that I even have it in my top 10 Spielberg films. Opening sequence, Omaha Beach, incredible. It's up there with the boot camp sequence in Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, just for visceral power and putting the audience right into the shit, because Spielberg did that incredibly well. But the rest of the movie, I mean, it's good, but it's not up to that level, in my opinion. There are plenty of people that would have Saving Private Ryan among, let's say, their top 3 Steven Spielberg films. I like the first 3 Indiana Jones films better than Saving Private Ryan. I will put Empire of the Sun above Saving Private Ryan. But that's beside the point. Debating the merits of Spielberg, as great a filmmaker as has ever worked in the business, is a little bit of a fool's errand, I freely admit. But I don't have an answer as to why A Civil Action did not make a stronger impression either with critics or audiences. Now, John Travolta, a very sort of interesting guy, a fascinating career, and a bit of a tragic figure because of the passing of his son, Jet, and the fact that his longtime bride, Kelly Preston, died of cancer, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago. It may have even been, no, I'm sorry, it was more like, it was definitely less than 4 or 5 years ago, at least I think. But either way, there's so much tragedy that has surrounded him, but so much achievement. And you look at his career, he has a very unusual career path because he came on the scene and, Welcome Back Kotter with Gabe Kaplan, a guy that I adore because he's a poker player and poker announcer, and he's such a character. But Travolta burst on the scene, Vinnie Barbarino, Welcome Back Kotter, and then he did Brian De Palma's Carrie with Nancy Allen and Sissy Spacek. And he continued to work. He did Grease, which was an enormous hit and a kind of cultural touchstone. And then he made some movies that were actually really good, such as working with De Palma and Karen Allen again in Blowout. Didn't really make it at the box office. And he did a sequel, I forgot to mention Saturday Night Fever, where he could have very easily gotten a Best Actor Oscar. Forget nomination, he got the nomination. That was where Stallone inadvertently did a fake out, and in a half a second, John Travolta thought that he was about to win the Best Actor Oscar when Sylvester Stallone was up there giving the award. And the Best Actor goes to that new young heavyweight. That new young heavyweight. Sly's words. He was just trying to make it more exciting. He didn't mean any harm. But as John Travolta told the story, how's Richard Dreyfuss a new young heavyweight? He had been in Jaws. He had been in Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. He had been in American Graffiti. If there is any new young heavyweight, right, a Rocky, a boxing reference, like, I understand what Stallone was doing there. That was fine. But he made John Travolta believe that he had won the Best Actor Oscar, and instead it was Richard Dreyfuss for The Goodbye Girl, which is a really good movie. But there's nothing special about Dreyfuss's performance. He's better in The Apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz. He's better in Jaws, for crying out loud. Even though Matt Hooper has sex with Brody's wife in the book. Spoiler alert, they have sex in the book. Boy, that would have been a great turn if they did that in a movie. Little adorable Richard Dreyfuss hooking up with Lorraine Gary, the wife of the studio executive Sid Sheinberg. But Travolta probably should have won the Oscar there for Saturday Night Fever. And there was some Oscar buzz for him, and I mentioned how he has an unusual career path. When things started to dry up for him in the early 80s, in part, the box office failure of Blowout really hurt. And that's a movie a lot of people absolutely love, including Roger Ebert, who had it among his best films, The Year of Chariots of Fire and Raiders of the Lost Ark. He loved that movie. But Travolta's career kind of went off the cliff. He made a sort of a comeback with Look Who's Talking, but that's not a good movie. That's just, it's fun, it's silly, but he doesn't really have to do any film acting. He just has to react to sound effects and Bruce Willis's voice and all of this nonsense. Not good. And then he started making these kind of movies that were straight to video. It's like, this guy is a huge talent. This is a major actor of his era. What's going on with his career? And then, as if by magic, Quentin Tarantino plucked him from relative obscurity to star as Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction. And I don't actually love Travolta's performance in Pulp Fiction. I think that he's okay, but it was so good to see him back on screen in a great movie and giving at least a terrific performance, if not Oscar-worthy. There were some people that were thinking, well, Tom Hanks won the Oscar last year with Philadelphia. Maybe they're not going to give it to him again. History tells me that Hanks' performance in Forrest Gump is really, really good and certainly worthy of the Oscar. I don't think Travolta does that much in that role. He has his moments with Uma Thurman. I'm going to go home and I'm going to jerk off. All that stuff is gold. But I didn't think that it was going to win, and he didn't end up winning. However, the next year, Travolta kind of solidified his comeback because Get Shorty, the Barry Sonnenfeld film with, I'm going to talk about an unbelievable cast, another human cheat code in Gene Hackman, Rene Russo, who was just crushing it in that era, and the always fire Danny DeVito, among others, including fantastic Dennis Farina and a pre-Sopranos James Gandolfini, who almost walks away with the movie. He's so good. Travolta, I will stand on business. Get Shorty is the single best performance of his career. That is how good he is. Where was his Oscar nomination? I do not know these things, but I know when the Oscar nominations were announced, I was pissed because I saw Get Shorty in theaters with my dad on opening night, and we were both blown away. It is maybe a small notch below Pulp Fiction. Get Shorty is a phenomenal film. Is it the best film of Sonnenfeld's career? I can flip a coin between that and the first Men in Black. But Travolta was doing great work. Broken Arrow, it's absurd. It's fantastic. Face Off, he's fucking great in Face Off. You could say that he outacts Nicolas Cage. He has the kind of showier role because he gets to spend more of the movie as the good guy, but with the brain of the world's #1 terrorist. It's just absolute gold. Then he did a film, Mad City, with Dustin Hoffman, Alan Alda. I could see what they were trying to do. It was not entirely successful. He did the movie Michael. So Travolta was everywhere. And maybe it was a little bit of John Travolta fatigue is why A Civil Action didn't make the impression it should have. Yeah, it's technically fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's in the mid-60s. But I saw this film when I didn't see it in theaters. I mean, I could make up a story, but no, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it on DVD when it first hit, and I thought it was a masterpiece. I thought the movie was incredible. They took a true story, and speaking of Spielberg, it was written and directed by Steven Zaillian, who wrote the screenplay for Schindler's List, and also wrote and directed one of my favorite kind of undersold great movies from the 90s, Searching for Bobby Fischer. So in A Civil Action, Travolta, it's a true story. Most of what we see actually happened. Maybe it didn't happen in exactly the same sequence, but it happened. Similar to Erin Brockovich, that's a true story also. And me saying that I feel like Travolta gives a better performance in this one than Julia does in that one, that's not to impugn Julia. It's Julia's best movie performance, in my opinion, except for Leave the World Behind, where she is killer in that movie. Not that she was going to get an Oscar nomination, but if she had, I would not have blinked because she does something different there. But Erin Brockovich, also a true story, very, very close to what happened. And A Civil Action, as I say, about 2 years earlier, Travolta plays a real-life attorney who I have much respect for professionals. I don't like ragging on people, whether they're actors, whether they're accountants like my dad, whether they're lawyers. But the character of Jan Schlichtman, that's who Travolta plays, a real-life guy who is an attorney. He's a bit of an ambulance chaser. He's a bit of a headline chaser. He's the kind of guy who will drive a $150,000 car when a $50,000 car would suffice. No thank you. I don't need to get a Maserati. I'm good with my Lexus. No. He's a flashy kind of guy. He does interviews on radio shows. He's a bit of a local celebrity. He's a good attorney, but he seems to be motivated by do, re, mi. And at a certain point, it's a bit of a cliche because the movie The Rainmaker from the previous year kind of gets into this, where the Matt Damon character identifies that Jon Voight's character, who's a terrific attorney, at a certain point, he stopped giving a shit about any version of truth and simply started billing clients and doing whatever paid the most money. So as we meet Jan early in the film, he is this kind of hotshot. When he's out on the town, he's got a different supermodel-looking woman on his arm. Life is pretty good for Jan Schlichtman. William H. Macy, another extraordinary performer, plays a member of his law firm. And I think Tony Shalhoub is also in the film. And if I'm wrong, I apologize, as I just have it in my head that pre-Monk Tony Shalhoub is also part of the law firm. So they're in business to try to service their clients to the best of their ability, but they're in business to make money. And this movie goes into an area of law that I was, quite frankly, unfamiliar with. And that is, there might come a time where you have clients that have been hurt badly and they don't really have the money to pay you, but you are so focused and so committed on getting to the bottom of some kind of atrocity that you are going to give up everything you have to figure out what went wrong and to try to right a terrible wrong. And that's something, speaking of The Rainmaker, that movie gets into, where somebody who should have, I hate to use the word qualified, we're debating this right now in the Luigi Mangione era, but in the movie The Rainmaker, there is a character who should not have died, but somebody in an ivory tower somewhere decided that the lung transplant that he should have been easily qualified for, given how much money his mom was paying, they basically said, no, thank you, can't. You don't get a transplant, he dies. So there's that angle in that movie. In this movie, John Travolta's Jan Schlichtman, this skirt chasing, ambulance chasing, headline chasing, and I don't think the real guy was quite as much as what we're presented with, because in the world of the movie, it adds to Travolta's performance because this is a fully defined three-dimensional character that Travolta plays. This is a top 3 performance that he has ever given. He is fantastic every step of the way. So he starts off, he's just going to make money, he's going to do a little investigating and figure out, what happened here. But whatever it was that got him into the law in the first place, he started off like a Rudy Baylor in The Rainmaker, who is idealistic, not above getting into some gray area shit if it'll help him win the case, but idealistic, and somebody, in the case of The Rainmaker, he sees terrible wrongs and he is going to go to the mat to try to rectify them. And Travolta's Jan Schlichtman starts the film a certain way, and he slowly evolves and realizes, I can't be this kind of attorney anymore. This is too important. And the area of the law, as I was saying, that I didn't really ponder is all but giving up your business in service of a client. It's not something that I would ever imagine taking place. But in the world of this film, Jan becomes so obsessed with this one case, similar to Erin Brockovich. It's not the same companies, but it deals with toxic waste dumping. That was big in the 80s and 90s, movies like that. And contamination of water causing major health issues to the people in the surrounding areas. It's all, corporate malfeasance. Another great, we love that one. A corporate malfeasance. That could mean almost anything. But this movie is about corporate malfeasance. Now, I mentioned the other cheat code actor. The two people, in my opinion, the lifelong cheat code actors, Gene Hackman, Robert Duvall, both of whom are still with us, both of whom are retired. Well, Robert Duvall in this film, he plays a kind of a homespun Southern attorney who comes across when we first meet him as a guy he's maybe a little bit batty, a little bit of a kind of doddering old man. But then we quickly realize that he's a better attorney than Jan, because Jan has his information together, how he's going to present. This is the first trial or the first kind of court case of this awful bit of corporate malfeasance. People are dying, people are getting very sick, mysterious cancers. Sound familiar? Like this all happened. So Travolta's character of Jan has the information. He's ready to question his witnesses, and he's got it together. And Robert Duvall's character says something like, I can appreciate what you're trying to do, kiddo, but none of this is going to end up happening. You're not going to be able to get anybody up onto the stand. I'm sorry. And it's a weird scene the first time watching the movie. Sorry for spoilers, because I'm like, what the fuck is this dude talking about? What is he saying? They're about to have a trial. What do you mean you're not? He knew a certain loophole in the law that most people probably wouldn't have even contemplated, and certainly as someone who knows nothing of the law, it wasn't even in part of the thought process. He goes and he makes a certain appeal of the court. Travolta can't call any witnesses. He's not allowed to bring anybody up there. Case dismissed. And Jan is so angry, and he is so galvanized, not in a good way. He can't believe this has happened. And that is what gets him to that level where he is going to risk everything to continue to push this awful travesty, this miscarriage of justice. He's going to go as far as he can, and then some. And there are movies, and have been movies, we've all seen the trailers, where the implication is he will risk everything to get to the truth. Well, in this case, he already knows the truth, but he will risk everything to try to make the wrongdoers face some form of justice. Now, justice is not always murder or jail or some sort of a vengeance, Jason Statham Breaking Bones level thing, or Clint Eastwood back in the day, or Charles Bronson in Death Wish. Sometimes it is a more measured victory where we give this person $1 million, their son is not coming back, but at least it's something. At least it's an admission. and understanding these people did not care that what they were doing was harmful. They didn't care. If they have to pay enough money, maybe they'll stop doing it, because nobody in business wants to be put out of business. It's really just that simple. And what the other thing, or one of the other things the movie does so beautifully, is we get why Jan is so angry and why he is now 100% about taking this case as far as I can, even if it's to the Supreme Court, even if it's to, from the federal perspective, the Justice Department. But at the same time, you look at his partners, and especially the William H. Macy character, what a beautiful performance that he gives. We as the audience don't know whose side we're supposed to be on. The two guys have a terrible, well, it's more of a one-way argument, because Jan is bankrupting all of them. They are taking out second mortgages to sustain the practice while they pursue this case to the ends of the earth. And William H. Macy has a meltdown. It's maybe the best film acting of his entire very formidable career, where he basically lays it out. We're following you. We have followed you. And now we have followed you into the ground. I got $50 left. You want it? Here. Fight injustice. Fight injustice. And for his character, the fighting of the injustice maybe has set him back where he'll be working until he's 90. He might have been able to retire in less than a decade. That's now gone. Here, Jan, here's $50. Fight injustice. And it makes us uncomfortable because we want Jan to continue. But man, we understand. This guy also has given everything he had to this cause. And it wasn't even his case. We feel Jan's rage and why he can't just stop, why he can't turn around, why he is willing to give up everything to take this as far as he can. But therein lies the rub. He had other people and has other people to think about. And he's taking actions that he's not only hurting himself, he's hurting the people he works with. They're all supposed to be in it together, but it's pretty much his word. And Travolta captures all of the kind of facets of Jan as he continues to push and fight. And you know that he's not going to back down. He's not that kind of a personality. But sometimes you go as far as you can. And without spoiling it, this movie closes the only way that like if you don't know, because I didn't know the true history of this. I know the company H.R. Grace. I had heard of them, and I'd heard of the food purveyor Beatrice. They took over, for example, the marketing of Tropicana at a certain point in the early 80s. So you hate to look at it from this perspective, but the reality is when you have a corporate monolith into the billions that size, look at what happened when the movie The Insider, where the cigarette industry, well, who went after them? Justice Department. Ultimately, it's going to be the feds. And Jan, as somebody who probably should have been a sole proprietor, you get to a certain point, it's just too big for you. It's just too big. Somebody else is going to have to finish the job. Somebody with unlimited funds, with very, very deep pockets, let's say the federal government. And when the movie ends, it's an interesting, this isn't like a twist ending type thing, but it's an interesting, the movie leaves us in an interesting place as far as we kind of think about what we've seen. You ask the question, well, was it all worth it? Well, for the audience, I think it sure was. And for Jan, it sure was. Not all of the people involved in the case would necessarily agree, though. And I don't know that Jan's partners think it was worth it. They may have wished that he had just gone only as far as the first trial. All right, Maybe he could have turned all of the documents over to someone else at that point. And then maybe we wouldn't have gotten ourselves millions in debt. But when you have that single-mindedness of purpose, a classic hero, a classic Hollywood protagonist, don't take no for an answer, and you fight to the last. You just, in the words of Rocky Balboa, don't stop nothing. And Jan Schlichtman will not stop. He will continue to move forward. He gets hit. It's not about how hard you get hit. It's how hard you can get hit. He takes a lot of body blows in this movie. He keeps dragging himself up, and he just does not lose. He doesn't lose the through line of what he's trying to do, and he is going to take it. He's going to take it as far as he can, and probably a little bit further than that. And yeah, it's just unfortunate the movie didn't really do that well at the box office. And Duvall didn't end up winning supporting actor. It was Conrad Hall was the cinematographer. I think American Beauty might have won Best Cinematography. I don't remember that specifically. But the movie is gorgeously shot. And as courtroom dramas, it's not a thriller, but as courtroom dramas go, and movies that are in that ballpark of what we would call a courtroom drama, a legal drama, this is top 5. Like, there's no reason why this movie is in the mid-60s on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't get why it's not in the 80s. I'm just going to call it John Travolta fatigue. I can't think of any other reason why this film is not better remembered by history, but hopefully a new generation can discover it or rediscover it, if you will, and say, you know what, this is fantastic. Why did so many people sleep on just how great Travolta is in this movie? It's not a showy role. This is not him going bonkers as Castor Troy / Sean Archer in Face Off. It's not even what he does in Mad City, which I don't really like his performance in that film. But it's certainly comparable to what he does in Pulp Fiction and the just home run that he hits in Get Shorty, a film that got a ton of acclaim, great reviews. I think it's in the high 80s on Rotten Tomatoes. And John won the Golden Globe for Best Actor, but he just didn't get nominated. But A Civil Action, the newest entry in our ongoing series of the best movie you've never seen, written and directed by Steven Zaillian and starring John Travolta, William H. Macy, and I think Tony Shalhoub, with the human cheat code Robert Duvall crushing it in a supporting role. This has been episode 437 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your early Saturday evening here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then,